Welcome to this webinar on celestial healing intelligences. Yeah, that heal. And I'd like to start with a brief overview of what energy healing is. And then we'll follow that by 3 minutes of silence. And then we'll follow that by a prayer. And then we'll dive into tonight's topic. I'm really glad everybody's here. I'm really excited. We have a nice, very nice big group to start off the new year, which is very sweet. So, energy healing is, you could kind of say it's a technology. We could say it's a technology or a system of understanding how awareness focuses in order to produce positive, healthful effects in the physiology. Awareness is wholeness. Awareness is that aspect of our consciousness, which is basically pure source material. We use awareness. We focus it in a way that allows the transformational power of awareness to be maximally impactful on the physiology. Different ways of focusing awareness or attention. We're really going to get into the details of that tonight, and it's just so incredibly interesting. So, yeah, awareness is source material. It is that stuff of which the source of creation is comprised. Therefore, at the beginning of our webinar, we always take a few minutes to quiet the awareness down and just have a few moments of experiencing the nature of awareness itself. When we close the eyes and we stop talking and we just be quiet within ourselves, we get a chance to feel what our awareness is like and what it's doing. So that's the next thing we're going to do, is close the eyes for about 3 minutes. Nobody has to worry about the time because I'll keep track of the time. I'm just going to mute myself and then bring up my my clock. And then after about 3 minutes, I'll let you know that 3 minutes is up. And do take a few moments to quietly, gently bring the awareness back out of the silence, the inner silence, back out to the surface, where we draw more of that potential of the source of creation with us as the awareness comes back up to the surface in a gentle and gradual way. All right, let's close our eyes. Oh, all right, everyone. Let's take a moment and slowly open the eyes. Awareness flows both in and out toward the material level of creation and in toward the eternal source of creation. In energy healing, we get used to moving the awareness intentionally, either toward the out or toward the in, depending upon the needs of the moment and how to best place oneself for the optimal perspective on whatever's happening in the healing process. It's like a skill. It's a skill, in and out. Thank you to the source of creation for being everything. Thank you to God. Thank you for being all of us and the whole universe. Thank you for being the immeasurably precious bridge of knowledge that connects the unmanifest absolute field of pure being with the entire universal field of its expression. Thank you for this webinar time that we all have together. It's such a precious time for me. I always learn things, and I feel as if the knowledge of energy healing has precious opportunity to expand and grow in the light of your awareness, because all our awareness is here together, right? Thank you to each one of you for being here. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be the voice and to have this chance to share with you all the details and the nuances of the energy healing process tonight through the lens of celestial healing intelligences. So thank you all for being with me. Today's topic, celestial intelligences. We need to put it all in perspective, of course. So I have some visual aids for everybody here. We're going to put everything in perspective now, because when we're talking about celestial intelligences, we have to understand where we need to place our awareness in order to access all the resources that level of our consciousness and that level of intelligence provides for the healing process. Okay, so I'm going to share screen with y'all guys. And there we go. We have this diagram, and we can put us in here too. We can put me in here. Hello. This is on my other screen over here. So the physical body is the most dense and concrete, and then etheric body is like a map of the body, and then mental body and emotional bodies are subtler forms of ourself, obviously. And then don't mind that. This chart is going to be undergoing some changes, and so that aura is going to be taken out of there, or it's actually going to be replaced back in there in a different way. And then astral body is, but the aura line is useful because it kind of divides up between what we think of as our present self and what we think of as more of the eternal or more permanent self. We could say permanent self down here, present self and permanent self. And as awareness quiets down and settles down to the ocean of being, or we could say the source of creation down here at the bottom, then it goes into this area where the astral and causal bodies are, where the laws of everything's more abstract As the awareness settles down, the mind becomes and thinking becomes more abstract, and the laws of nature become more abstract. And there's this point that we hit where the laws of time and space no longer inhibit the flow of intelligence. I mean, really, I would say that line is actually here at the mental and emotional bodies, because are our minds bound by time and space? Really not so much. I mean, you may have a thought at a particular moment in time, but the mental body itself isn't really bound by time. You can remember things, right? Or we can study history, or we can put awareness on, say, celestial forms such as star clusters or galaxies, right? The mind is not constrained to the earth, nor is it constrained by time. And certainly the emotions are not constrained by space and time, because if you love somebody, let's come back here. If you love somebody who's completely on the other side of the earth, nothing stops them from feeling your love. Nothing stops your love from flowing immediately over to them. If you love somebody who's passed on in this lifetime, so they're not even in a physical body, nothing stops the love from just going right to them. So even the mental and emotional bodies are really not bound by space and time. But as we get down to the astral and causal levels of the physiology, then we really come into areas that are very unconstrained by laws of nature. And there's a lot of flexibility, there's a lot of pliability, and there's a lot of overlap with life. You could say the closer you get to the source of creation, the more life there is, the more life force there is. I know on my chart I've written ocean of being, but I'm going to amend the chart. Just saying. I have another chart. Okay. So all beings and all life come from the ocean of being. Maybe that's good that that word being is in there. All life forms come from the ocean, the unmanifest, eternal, qualityless, silent ocean of being is the source of all life forms. So you can imagine all these life forms are flowing up. They're rising out of the ocean of being, and some of them come up just up into the causal level, and some of them come up into the astral level, and some of them come up into the emotional level, and so forth and so on. And we, of course, as humans, we're like this oval right here. We come up all the way to the physical level. But the beings of light, or the aspects of life that are intimately engaged with the laws of nature that construct the human physiology, they exist down here at the causal level of the physiology. So I'm going to show you another chart. And I'm just coming back to me over here because it's just a little messy. So what we're going to do today is we're going to be looking more deeply at the causal body, because that's where we find all these fundamental forms and functions that directly interface with the healing process. So here is another screen share. Hello. So here's just the causal body. That's just the causal body down there in the astral body. And you can imagine the rest of the chart extends up above this. And here we have the source of creation. And energy healing happens way down here, way down here. These little waves represent the movement of the collapsing and expanding of the three gunas into and out of the ocean of consciousness, or the source of creation. We will return to this chart. But before we return to the chart, it's good to actually get a taste of the energy healing process. And I'm also going to just, as we're transitioning in here, okay. Mhm. So, what I'm doing is I'm quieting my awareness down to the source of creation. And as I do that, my awareness expands. And as it expands, it reaches out and it embraces the whole field of creation. Not that it isn't there all the time anyway, but just specifically for the sake of this moment and this healing, I'm letting you know what's going on. I like to let you know what's going on when we're doing energy healing because it helps the intellect and it helps the flow of attention. And what I'm seeing is our whole group, like a beautiful circle of friends, like a beautiful circle of associates and loved ones connected through this moment in space and time in this webinar. In the center of the circle is the light of the divine. In my chart, you know, the source of creation is at the bottom. But in reality, the source of the creation is at the center of every particle of creation and every moment and every soul. Like the center sun at the center of the universe and radiating from the center sun, radiating from that center that's not just in the center of the universe, but is in the center of every particle of creation and is in the center of what we know to be ourselves, are the pulses of divine intention responsible for the creation of this reality. And love and gratitude. Love drives those pulses. Love drives them. Love that's born of a recognition of the value of each one of us that is so great that as each of us stretches to recognize that level of adoration, the heart spontaneously expands because the love of the Creator for each one of us is so great. It utterly transcends the capacity of the human nervous system and the human system to comprehend. It is so great. The love of the Creator for each one of us is so great that it is incomprehensible. And so, as we put our attention on that and on that relationship, the heart expands. As the heart expands, a safe space is created in the very center of the body. And that safe space informs the body that it is okay to let go of imbalances, whatever imbalances are there, whatever memories or impressions or pain, whatever trauma has locked itself into the physiology in the form of toxins or neurochemicals associated with stress, or even physiological anomalies as a byproduct of damage, scar tissue. The subtler reality of those forms are discordant feelings. So the awareness can both experience at the denser level how the bed of comfort and trust is available to allow those to be released. But as they release underneath, we find that there are discordant feelings. And those also can be released. Those also soften up. And that sense of security and comfort and safety in the lap of such a divine unconditional love, everything's safe. Who comforts? The greatest, highest level of one's own nature and the divine comfort the soul, and the comfort in the soul provides a platform for the effortless and spontaneous release of both physiological abnormalities and imbalances, but also discordant feelings. And the discordant feelings, both born of and impacting one's sense of self. It is the soft bed of unconditional love that reshapes the sense of self, because we all have a sense of identity of who and what we are. But when seen through the lens, when we see ourselves through the lens of the love of the divine, which is beyond comprehension, it not only stretches the senses of perception and the mind and intellect, but it heals the ego. It heals the sense of self. It allows that part of us that we know to be ourselves to realign with true self, the true self, the true essential self, which is who we are as seen through the eyes of God, essentially. That's the first relationship. That's like the first fundamental frequency. The first fundamental. If I'd had just a second longer, I would have brought my flute, but maybe tomorrow I'll bring it. Because boy, are there great musical metaphors that can go along with all of this. The first fundamental, so essential. It speaks to the soul and expands comprehension of who and what we are. And that expanded comprehension gives rise to new neural connections, rewiring of the nervous system, not only in the brain, not only in the cranium itself, but also in the autonomic nervous system. Because that sense of trust allows an autonomic nervous system to function in a more stable and adaptable manner. So that whatever challenges one faces, including the challenges of letting go of the threads of trauma, because even purification can be uncomfortable sometimes. Even healing can be a little uncomfortable, right? Because something has to change in the body. So the nervous system adapts based on the foundation of self-recognition on a far broader, far more comprehensive foundation. And that gives rise to more stability and adaptability in the nervous system. And that forms a foundation for handling the purification process with more grace, handling it more efficiently, more wisely. More beautifully, easing through, gracefully easing through the process of purification, the process of transformation. So this is the healing that heals the healing process. This is the healing that heals the healing process. And I see these like little waves of excitement and gratitude and a sort of sense of, oh, the potential that's there when awareness can focus like this to give rise to a completely new way of experiencing and addressing the healing process so that it's graceful and soft and comfortable and fulfilling and well aligned with all of the forms and functions that are taking place in the environment so that you have support in the healing process rather than working against, right? So that all of nature is rising up with you to support your healing rather than feeling like you're having to fight each step of the way. It's a lot of compassion because as souls, we chose so many things in these lifetimes. We chose the birth family that we chose, and we chose the types of other relationships that we interacted with in our lifetime, as well as events and circumstances and strengths and weaknesses in the physiology itself and so forth. So many factors making each person here a little bit different, each in their own unique way, experiencing the healing process. What's important is the fundamental relationship. The fundamental relationship is important. We have relationships with different people. We have relationships with our body. We have relationships with our emotional structure and with the traumas we might have experienced in our life. We have lots of different relationships. But the relationships show up in a way that is supportive of the long-term goals of the soul when the fundamental relationship is in place. And that is the relationship between each one of us as individuals and God. That's where our healing started. It's finding that center light, that light in the center, right? In the center of the soul, in the center of each moment, in the center of each particle in creation. That's the seat. And that relationship is eternal. All the other relationships are transient. That's the only one that really, that's the one that's worth banking on. That's the one that's worth establishing as the fundamental or foundational relationship for all the other celestial healing intelligences. So, as we dive into this topic of celestial healing intelligences, it's beautiful to start by establishing the relationship with the ultimate intelligence of all intelligences of all creation, which is the relationship with God. For those who don't believe in God, then you can think of that as a relationship with the Creator or a relationship with the divine. It doesn't matter. I happen to personally believe in God, so I'm using that word. But I know it carries a lot of religious connotations. But it's so efficient, so I'm using it. I'm becoming less sort of shy about that. All right. So when we talk about all of the in celestial healing intelligences within the body, we're talking about a whole gamut of different types of forms of life. So let's go back to the chart because I've got some questions are coming in on about the chart anyway, and it's good to keep it all in perspective. And I used to have this nice chart that I could zoom in, and that was my goal. That's why some of these words are really, really tiny. but I didn't quite pull that off. So we have this lovely chart, and I can zoom in and out like that. Um, so down here at the causal level of the physiology, think of this as the skin of consciousness, this very thin layer of consciousness that's between the whole manifest ocean of creation and the source of creation. And this is where all the beings of light and I put this word divine presence. I use this word divine presence to essentially describe all the forms of creation that we would think of, like angels and gods and devatas and devas and archangels and various healing intelligences, various other healing forms. And these are the forms with presence. These are the active, you could say these are the active or functional expressions of the divine. So down at this level, I should divide my oval in half, because on one side you would have forms, and on the other side you would have functions. Form follows function. Okay. So examples of forms, examples of forms are impulses of universal intelligence. Impulses of universal intelligence include light medicines and templates and structures, subtle structures. You could say the subtle scaffolding or structure that's behind the material structures of creation. Fundamentals of divinity are also forms. Laws of nature, and I need those in my chart here. We could have one more layer bigger than impulses of intelligence, and that would be laws of nature. Because the laws of nature are set, they're the will of God. The laws of nature are those principles that bind the field of expression and by which all expressed things must conform. So those are forms. But the functions, the three gunas are functions, they're interactions. The three gunas, the interactions of the three gunas are functions. And the living forms in the celestial, in the causal field are essentially functions. They're functional. They promote change. They actually interact with the laws of nature and the fundamentals, the impulses of intelligence. So, question comes in the graphic of the causal field, where are the Vedic impulses? These little waves down here represent the inward and outward flow of consciousness into and out of the source of creation. And I actually have another nice little visual of just that part of the chart. So let's look at that for a second. And it is here. Very good. We'll look at this one. So this chart shows, and this was in May, I did a webinar just about this, only just covering this dynamic right here, which is what happens in the gap between the unmanifest ocean of the source of creation and the very, very, very first divisions that it takes or that it makes as it comes into creation. These in Vedic science are known as the three gunas. These three gunas have associated with them beings of light. And these three gunas are so fundamental to the whole created universe that the life forms that represent them, or that you could say, remember, form follows function. So the function, the sort of the life force of these three values is are so fundamental, and they're so like enmeshed in every particle of creation, that they're found everywhere. They're found in every religion. They're found as the Trinity in Christianity, and they're found as the three values of God in Hinduism. Let's see, Saraswati, Lakshmi, and Durga in the female form, and um, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva in the male form. Oops. And yeah, so three and one, three and one. The one shows up as three. The one appears as three, and then the three interact with each other in such a way as to show up as many. Anyway, eventually I'll have my other chart made up so fancy. So this is happening. You can see this happening at that little wavy part of the other chart. And then, even deeper than that, just to get everything in perspective here, even deeper than that, got to go to a different. Even deeper than that is this. This comes directly from Vedic science, so you're going to see some Sanskrit terms here. But there is an understood dynamic by which consciousness folds from the material level of creation, and it rolls in through into finer and finer expressions of consciousness until it eventually comes to rest in the source of creation, in the silence within the gap. And from that silence, awareness or consciousness is infused with infinite resources that allows it to emerge from the gap. So then those resources infuse awareness with dynamism, and that dynamism, infusing awareness, allows the awareness to reemerge from the gap, and it reemerges reborn, renewed, re-enlivened, enhanced, magnified, and made to be a better expression of the divine than it was before. So this is what the life forms in the celestial field are doing constantly. They rise up from the source of creation, and then they collapse back into the source of creation, and they're renewed, and then they rise up again transformed and more precise and more perfect and more refined and more beautiful and more aligned with the will of God and the laws of nature. And that is happening in our consciousness constantly, because in the beginning, the forms come out of the source of creation in very abstract or subtle bodies. And the body is as good as it can be to be the vehicle for the divine at that subtle level of creation. But at some point, the form fails. At some point, the form isn't good enough. And the love that emerges from the source of creation that defines that form overwhelms the form. The form can't handle it. So it has to dive back into the ocean of silence, and it has to reshape itself in order to better handle that incomprehensible love. This is the healing process. This is what happens in energy healing. We have been there. As humans with physical bodies, we have been beings of light. And we went in and out and in and out and in and out until our light bodies were so refined and so perfect that our light bodies knew, I am the divine. I am divine being showing up as a light body. And then there was no more to evolve as a light body. That's it. You've gone as far as you can go. You've become an angel. So the next thing to do is to take a form that's a little more dense, a little more concrete, that exists in a little more complicated environment, and then to express until expression can go no further. No more, you can't take any more love. You just can't take any more of that unconditional, incomprehensible love in the body without it becoming overwhelmed. And when the overwhelm hits the form collapses back into the source of creation. It's renewed and rejuvenated and revitalized and enhanced, and it reemerges from the source of creation a little bit better to handle that love at that level of density. And that happens again and again and again and again until eventually the life force emerges from the source of creation and it says, oh, look, I'm really just the source of creation showing up as an astral form. And when that happens, one has reached a higher level of angelic expression. It says there, oh, Tom, make a note. We have to send people the painting by Hildegard. Hildegard von Bingen was this lovely saint. Was she? I think she was probably sainted. She was in the Catholic Church. I believe she was Catholic, and she was quite a mystic and visionary and architect and musician, and she had a convent. And anyway, she saw her celestial vision. She saw all the layers and the range of the entire celestial field of creation with all the angels and demons and all the everything. And she made paintings of them. And she was lovely. And her vision was true. So I'll send you the picture. Sorry, I didn't have it all queued up and ready to go for today. Maybe for tomorrow, I'll have that one queued up. But I just thought of it. Yeah, Hildegard saw that there are these layers. And so there are celestial beings that are at more of like of a lesser level of creation. And then there are celestial beings that are at a greater level of creation. Okay. So here in this chart, so some of the beings, they just stay close. They stay close to home. And they just keep diving in and out down here until eventually they come to their full refinement and structure, and they've sort of completed the lessons of that level of creation. And then they become more like astral beings, and they go in and out like that, in and out until they've completed the lessons of that level of creation. And then they get to come up and they get to be beings that show up all the way to the oral level or the emotional level. They show up as emotional structures even for us. And they go in and out until eventually even the emotional value is completely refined and completely at one, integrated, you could say integrated with divine truth. The body is so refined, even at the emotional level, that one just knows, oh, this is just the divine showing up in creation. And you can see that a being whose home base is down here in the source of creation and is showing up here at the emotional or mental level of creation has more autonomy over the created world than one who's staying close to home. If a being is staying really close to the source of creation, that's their field of autonomy. That's how far they can control or influence their environment. Now, of course, influences at that deep level will have ripple effects that go up. But if the being isn't completely evolved, the ripple effects that go up may not be 100% life supporting. But once that being has evolved fully into its like the full capacity or the full refinement of its form, then every impulse of its intelligence, every transformation that it activates or catalyzes at that deep level brings life closer to and in a more intimate relationship with God. And ultimately, that's the goal. You guys, this is a big change for me. This is like a big change for me, okay? Years ago, I used to say, and even recently, I used to say, what is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of the human life? And I used to say that the purpose of the human life was to be the vehicle, the eyes and ears of God, of the divine, so that that creator who knows all and sees all and is all powerful can also have the experience of learning new things or being surprised, or can have the kinds of experiences that a human being can have, because our nervous systems break time down into a linear experience, right? So for us, it's really easy to get a surprise. It's really easy to be like, oh, new information. Well, guess what? Oh, new information. The new information is that this comes out of a conversation with one of my children. He said, no, mom, you're wrong, which is almost like a mantra at my house sometimes. But but no, mom, you're wrong, that God is so big and so incomprehensible that you take God to be smaller than God is. He said, God can do that. God can know everything and be everything and have everything and be all powerful and be everywhere. And all by God's self, even without us, can experience awe and surprise and amazement and expansion of understanding. God doesn't need us for that. And I thought about that for a second. I thought, well, yeah, I guess, if you think of God as really, really big, like bigger than we can imagine, then yeah, God doesn't need us for that. So what does God need us for? God can't have a relationship without another party. God in God's self is one. God needs us for relationship. That was such an interesting concept to me. Like, you can't have a relationship without another party, right? And so God has created the creation in order to experience relationship, in order to exercise relationship. Because God knows what relationship is, but to exercise it, to engage in it, there has to be another party. And the underlying premise or principle of that engagement, of that relationship, is a love that is incomprehensible and totally unconditional. That's it. Anyway, it was a very interesting conversation for me, because I was like, oh, new. But what I realized is that because that relationship is an eternal relationship, it's the eternal relationship, then it becomes the guidepost, or you could say the goal of every action. When every action orients toward fortifying and integrating and enhancing the relationship of the individual with God, then those actions heal. So we are in energy healing. We can focus our awareness or attention on specific values of these celestial beings that reside in the causal level of creation. I'm going to go back to that chart. Now we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Let's see. Let's go to this chart. Okay, remember I said that these three values, these forms, arise from the functions of life force. There's a life force. There's a God force, or an aspect of the creator, which is this rising part. It rises out from the source of creation, refreshed and renewed and life supporting. And there's another one that's here responsible for the sort of slowing down the collapse and allowing the maintenance of the universe. And then there's another life force that's responsible for this dispersing, or the collapse of awareness back into the source of creation. Now, I'm going to talk about these a little bit in Vedic terms because this is the way I'm understanding them right now. But the value that's responsible for the dive of awareness back to the source of creation is known as Shiva. Remember, I mentioned there were like three male aspects in Vedic science that kind of represent this threefold, this three-in-one condition. So Shiva is that aspect of intelligence that we engage with when the awareness falls back into the source of creation for the renewal, right? But there is a more elaborated version of Shiva that is responsible for time. It's considered kind of like a relative of Shiva. And in the May webinar, I talked about how these three values start to curl into each other and fold in on each other. They reference each other. They reference each other. And by doing that, they start to create a kind of a fabric of consciousness that gives rise, that becomes the sort of the fundamental scaffolding on which the whole universe is created. And yeah, this time, the time combines that diving into the source of creation function with memory and with the laws of nature of time. It gives rise to the laws of nature of time. And when the orientation of the life is towards enhancing the relationship with God, then there's a lot of this purity in the collapse. These three, they start to talk to each other. And the purity informs the collapse, and the collapse informs the purity. And the net result is that time leads life in the direction of evolution. This is so important. That has to do with the personality. That has to do with people's personalities. It has to do with personal choices about whether the relationship with the divine is actually important or not, among other things. If it's important, let's do that. No. If it's important, and if it's the fundamental, if it's the foundation, if it's the first relationship, and you know it, and you recognize that it's the first relationship, then the relationship with these bodies of light, with these other forms, like the god of time, the lord of time, Vedic science recognizes as Lord Kalabhairava, then the relationship with that form is one that promotes evolution. It promotes good health. But the fundamental has to be there. This is where I'd probably bring out my flute. For those musicians in the group, tomorrow, I'll bring out my flute and I'll give you some examples. Because the first note casts its light on all the other notes. All the other notes are understood in relation to the first note. And the first note is built on a value of love, which is so huge that we cannot comprehend it in our little human physiologies. We try to comprehend it, and the physiology keeps finding that it's a little bit constrained or bound by the limitations of the form or the structure. And so that gives rise to, but trying to comprehend it gives rise to an environment that allows the body to relax and make some changes that it needs to make in order to comprehend that love. And then the body goes through that process of transformation. The transformation is brought about by devatas in the body. That's another type of life form. So all these different life forms, you know, there are all these different functions. We have angels and guides and gods and devatas. And they're all riding on these, they're all interacting with the laws of nature. Some of them create the laws of nature. The gods create the laws of nature. They're very, very close. They're right down there, right in, right in that gap between the absolute and the relative. So you can see that as a form becomes more integrated with the deepest level of consciousness, it also becomes more proficient at affecting the grossest level of consciousness. Bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest is both. That level of consciousness is both. This is your consciousness. So what's happening is we're going into another healing. They're channels, meridians that run between the heart center and the head center. And in the head center, we've got all of our 5 senses of perception, as well as subtle perception, right? The pineal gland, and as well as mind and intellect are also seated up in the head. But the heart possesses a very unique intelligence. And there's a whole neural network around the heart. The heart's intelligence is responsible for controlling the electromagnetic field of the body. And the electromagnetic field of the body controls how the DNA shows up at a cellular level. The electromagnetic field of the body is actually seated in ionized proteins in the body. So the whole the electrical reality of the body is seated with these subcellular structures, these ionized proteins, neurochemicals, hormones, enzymes, etc. Those forms tell the cells how to show up. They tell the cells whether to be a healthy cell or an unhealthy cell. And they are controlled by the intelligence of the heart. There's a connection between the feelings in the heart and the actual physicality of the body. You can see why that relationship is so important, yes? So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the awareness to the heart center and offer the deep, deep, eternal silence of the source of creation to the heart center as an informant for the expression of the heart's greatest potential. Because when that silence sits here in the heart center, it revitalizes and rejuvenates and refreshes and magnifies and enhances the wisdom of the heart, the power of the heart, even the nervous system. It gives the heart a chance, the wisdom of the heart. It gives the functioning of the nervous system and this very, very, very fine perception that the heart has a chance to reset itself and re-emerge from that silence in a way that creates new neural connections, that creates a broader perspective or understanding about the nature of who and what we are as beings. And that process, that transformation is offered with all gratitude back to the divine. So the silence comes in and it rejuvenates and refreshes and upgrades the forms and functions of the wisdom of the heart. And then the renewed heart reflects back to the divine. It reflects back to that fundamental relationship goes back and says, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you for being my foundation. This brings up a very interesting point about relationships. A lot of us here, a lot of us, I bet a lot of y'all who are here have been lifelong students of either Vedic science or Eastern philosophies or New Age philosophies. Yes. And maybe some of us, some of you, some of us have been students of also Western. One of the differences between the Western approach to this relationship with the divine and the Eastern approach is the Eastern approach orients more toward impersonal God. It sees God as this immutable, eternal, absolute source of creation. The relationship is more like I bring myself to that, right? I settle my awareness down into that source of creation. Whereas the Western approach is more like personal God. It's that God comes to me. It's very interesting that there are these two dynamics that are somewhat different from one another, born of different philosophies. However, I realized that because we range all the way, do we need to bring up another chart? Bring the chart. Bring that chart. Charts are helpful at times like this because it's a bit of an expansion now of how the whole thing works. But the relationship is all of it, all of it, all of it, all of it. And different laws of nature dominate at different levels of expression. When we come up to the denser, more concrete levels of expression, we come up to the area where the relationship shows up as personal God, right up here, the physical material level. We have to honor and utilize, conform to the laws of nature of this level of creation. We have to work within the context. That's better. We have to work within the context of this level of creation, the laws of nature of the physical. Whereas when the awareness is settled way down here, we're working within the context of very, very huge flexibilities in the laws of nature, very, very abstract laws of nature that are universal, that are unbound by space and time, etc. So down at this level, we experience universal God, impersonal God, and at this level, we experience personal God. But the full potential of the relationship with God is all of it, both personal and impersonal. It's a very important point that we can't like sacrifice the personal aspect of the relationship with God for the impersonal. We can't say, well, I'm sort of a non-dualist and a follower of this, and so I mean, not to say that all non-dualists, I'm not passing judgment on anyone here, but the point is that we can't. Any relationship needs to be nurtured, right? It needs to be nurtured in as complete a way as possible in order for it to be integrated, in order for it to flourish and grow. And all of our relationships with all the celestial beings of all types and varieties are only aspects of our first fundamental relationship with God. And so that's the relationship. This is efficiency in healing, you guys, that we're working first with that relationship and nurturing it both from an impersonal level all the way up through all of the layers and nuances of the relationship between personal and impersonal, all the way up to completely personal relationship. So the whole thing is owned and the whole thing is loved and the whole thing is enhanced and supported through our actions. Some of you know what this means. For some of us here, this means understanding why it's important to change behaviors, to modify behaviors, to interact with the world in such a way that actions bring that relationship to the forefront and integrate it and do it honor and justice. I know, and so many of you, so many of us are doing the best we can at every moment, and offering that best back to the divine. So there, in the field of habits and behaviors, particularly functioning in a way that honors the value of moderation, right? So that moderation becomes one of the ways that we love the divine and that we fortify our relationship with God. Silence and dynamism, empty and full, all the forms. And it's just a simple restructuring of anywhere in the body, in the system, particularly in the field of behaviors and habits, that's not balanced. That's all. Just finding that balance, because the field of absolute being is a field of perfect balance. It's just offered with such tremendous love. And it's the love, you guys, you've heard me say this again and again in past webinars, that the love catalyzes the healing process, but it's the love that creates the context or sets the foundation by which the whole system feels comfortable to ease into a transformation. Otherwise, transformations can be experienced as uncomfortable. It's just the nature of it, because our bodies like habits. They like to do things the same every time. Okay, guys, I'm looking at the time. Oh, I forgot. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so a lot of questions came in, and we only have 2 minutes left. So I want to grab a question here. Yes, Greek gods are mentioned. Okay, there's a lot of just amazing questions. I promise I'm going to. Thank you. Hildegard was officially canonized as a saint in 2017. That was so recent. She deserved to be canonized a long time ago, I think. I just love her. But anyway, oh, you guys, such fabulous, beautiful questions. So what I'm going to do is just to answer one question about tonight's healing. One person asks, so does this become a virtuous cycle? Yes. The healings that we have done tonight become virtuous cycles. They get established because they repeat, right? We do the healing and then it's offered back into the source of creation. And there it goes, like it does the diving in and diving out until it becomes stabilized and integrated, and it becomes sort of knit into the very fabric of the physiology, the physical fabric of the physiology. And the body adapts. And as we know, the body likes habits and it likes to do things the same every time. So yes. So many incredible questions. So you guys, I'm really sorry that I didn't see all of your questions ahead. And plus I've got a whole pages of questions over here. So what I'm going to do tomorrow, and this is what I commonly do with these webinars, is we'll do a lot of talking about and healings and putting everything in perspective and getting a sense of how it all works. And then in tomorrow's webinar, I'll just start off with questions, and any elaborations on today's webinar will be on the foundation of everybody's questions. So that's what we'll do tomorrow. Everybody, whether you signed up for tomorrow's session or not, doesn't matter. You will get the recording. And my dear husband is very reliable about getting those recordings out the same day. So you'll get tonight's recording of tonight's session and recording of tomorrow's session tomorrow. And it'll be an hour and 15. And I hope I can get through all the questions in that time. I will do my best. I think I should be able to do that. And I'm really excited because, oh my goodness, such amazing questions. So I love you guys. And I'm sorry that we don't have another 2 hours because it's probably going to take me another hour at least to answer all the questions. But yeah, but we'll do it. We'll do it tomorrow. It's going to be lots of fun. And it's just a delight to be with all of you. Thank you all for showing up tonight. Absolutely beautiful. And I look forward to sharing more on this really interesting topic with everyone tomorrow. And if any more questions come up, send them in by email and I will address them. Thank you, everyone, for being with me tonight. I look forward to being with you again tomorrow. Good night.